As Jerika mentioned, tomorrow Pope Francis will visit the current Fromhold Correction Facility in Philadelphia. There he will spend time with selected inmates and their families, as well as prison staff. This comes as HBO is set to show a special report on America's criminal justice system from Vice, an international news channel. It features footage from President Obama's historic visit to a federal prison in Oklahoma earlier this year. He met with 6 inmates in an unprecedented conversation about the problems plaguing the system.
We can't raise kids in an environment where this is all they know and they're surrounded by it, and then think that somehow they are going to be immune from the influences that they're seeing every day.
Right.
It's what you were saying about your brother, just like, oh, well, and my big bro, he's going to prison. Then he starts thinking, I'll probably end up at some point going to prison, and that'll be okay. Your dad was in prison.
Joining us from the White House to talk about the administration's plans for reform is President Obama's senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett. Good morning, Valerie, and we're honored to have you with us this morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for putting the spotlight on this really important issue.
Well, you know, it's interesting. In this, we see the president very candidly admit to a lot of the stupid stuff he does as a child, how he didn't know his father. Why was this topic so important to him?
Well, as he has said, look, we have 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's prisoners. We spend $80 billion a year on prison. Those are the statistics. What the president wanted to do by going to El Reno is put a spotlight on the people and the effect that our current criminal justice system is having on the lives of not just the people who are incarcerated, but their families. And this film does an outstanding job of telling that story. And so we have to break the cycle of poverty. We have to raise our children in ways where they see an opportunity to grow up and be viable citizens and be a part of a community that's self-sufficient and responsible and abiding by the law. And I think this film shows how that is impossible with our current system.
Valerie, the president points to nonviolent drug offenses as a major contributor to the prison problem. I think it's nearly half of the federal prison population is in for drug offenses. I know there's also support for this on the right. The Koch brothers, for example, have been very active in trying to get prison reform. So is there enough bipartisan support to get some change here?
Anthony, yes, absolutely. We feel very confident right now that there is support on both sides of the aisle, in the House and in the Senate, to move forward this year on reasonable criminal justice reform. And you're right, we have all these people who were accused of nonviolent drug offenses who are incarcerated. Why don't we get them drug treatment? Why don't we rehabilitate them? Why don't we allow them to have jobs and be responsible members of society again? And we do have this great combination of the General Counsel of Koch brothers, with whom I have interacted several times and who cares desperately about this, to Cory Booker, who, former mayor of New York, who's seen what the effects of our incarceration system has had on the community that he loves so dearly. And this film weaves it all together in a very, very real way.
It really does, because you hear some personal stories from the inmates, and you get a sense that they feel as though there is an institutional bias. In fact, one inmate even says the system is designed for you to fail. So what needs to change the system?
We do have to change the system. We have to, and as the president said when he spoke to the NAACP earlier this summer, we have to look at what we're doing in our community to provide everything from early childhood education to reforming our suspension and expulsion so we keep our children in the classroom. We know that if they're expelled, there is a school-to-prison pipeline that is inevitable when they're on the streets. We have to look at our sentencing system and look at the mandatory minimums, where judges don't have the flexibility to look at the circumstances of a particular case and allow somebody an alternative to incarceration. And then we really have to reform the entire system. One of the more powerful moments in the movie was when the president said, "How many of you pled out?" to the people that he was meeting with, a handful of inmates, and they all said they did, which meant that they made a deal because they didn't have confidence that if they went to trial, it would be fair. And in fact, one of them tells a story about how he was in prison at the time that the crime he was accused of took place, so he couldn't possibly have done it. And the president said, "Well, why did you make a deal?" And he said, "Because they had 3 witnesses who said I was there." And the president said, "But you were in prison." And he said, I didn't think the system would work for me." We have to change that.